Hi there, it's Gabrielle Nicolay from SpeechKids and Raising Orchid Kids, and I am delighted to be talking to Jackie Beach. Jackie, thank you for being here.
Thank you. I love it.
We are going to talk about Rally today, which is like so much fun for you, right?
It is. I love Rally. It's definitely something that is a piece of my heart. And every chance I get to chat about it, I am more and more confident that I want to share it with people.
That's awesome. So, okay, I want you to tell the good people a little bit about you and your background, sort of where did you come from? And then we're going to talk about what Rally is, I promise. But first, tell them about you.
Fantastic. So I was a teacher for many years, 10 years. And then I became the director at a really lovely private school in the area. And during that time, I also had my own children. And my experience as a new mom paired with my time as an educator and an admin led me to really open my eyes to what it is to be a parent and some of the stressful things that come along with that. And that is actually how I got to know you. You came to the school and we sat down and chatted, and the rest is history.
Yeah. And so this school, which is just an absolutely lovely place that you ran, by the way,
Yeah.
um, was very supportive of kids who had some different developmental challenges.
Sure. Yeah. It was. And one of the things that was really important to me as my time while I was an admin there was to sort of create that space. It felt really important and it felt very necessary. When I became a parent, I was all of a sudden on the other side of the table where services and intervention became a part of my daily life. And it really impacted me. And even with my background in early childhood, it sort of rocked me how hard it was to know my next best choice and what my trajectory was going to be as far as decision making. So I kind of threw myself into creating a space that would be inclusive, welcoming, and empower parents to play a role in their child's time as a student and as a developing lovely little person that meant so much to these families. It was really hard to watch parents and their voices sort of be shut down by specialists and therapists. I saw myself in them a lot.
And so, yeah, walk us through sort of what you see. And because I think this is pretty common and we call them orchid kids around here, but when parents start to realize, oh, there's something different about my child, and they have that sinking feeling in the pits of their stomach.
Yeah.
And then they start talking to experts. There's something that happens there that you're alluding to, but can you just flesh that out a little bit?
Yeah. So I think it happens in different ways for different people. I was a NICU parent. So for me, I knew the minute I left that NICU what was in front of me. But sometimes when a family or a mom or a dad has a feeling or an inkling that something is not right, that's a really great indicator to start having conversations with your healthcare professionals. Another thing that happens though is that those concerns and frustrations and things that make you feel nervous are sometimes shut down. And that's hard because you want to trust experts. The other thing that happens in another instance is when you start sending your child to daycare or preschool, those trained professionals might bring up something that they think you should know about. And there's a really interesting space there for a mom or a dad where you want to hear it, you want to understand it, but it also makes you nervous and scared and fearful. Yeah. So that sense of sort of being paralyzed and not knowing your next step feels bad. I mean, it's not a great feeling. And that can happen to a variety of families in a variety of ways. But it's either something you know as a parent that you want to pursue, and sometimes you don't know how to pursue it, or it is brought to your attention by somebody else who's an educator, a family friend. And sometimes these things just do need time. And it is something developmentally that's appropriate and it's happening and it will unfold the way it needs to. And then other times it's really important to consider your intervention options. And I think that moment of education and empowering parents for their choice and what they're going to do feels very important to me.
Yeah. And, we, on the professional side of things, don't always get it right either. Like, we bring up concerns and we I've been in meetings where I've botched it. I've been in meetings where other professionals have botched it. And sometimes, our own baggage gets in the way of transmitting a message. And the message I hear, from you, and that we feel really strongly about sort of together, is this notion that we're all here to help the child.
Right.
Like, really what we want is to discover, like, who are you? Why are you here? What can you do?
Yeah.
And where do you need a little help?
Absolutely. You got it right. And you said something really wonderful that really makes you an outlier, which is you are willing to understand that this is not an exact science, right? Experts, people who we know have done extensive amounts of research, they've done every possible route for education. They still make mistakes, and we are only human, and this is not an exact science. And what is really important is that families and parents and advocates and caregivers all feel like they can express themselves, ask the questions they want to ask. Information is provided to everybody who's on the team. That's a very big deal. I think that with Rally, and the full name is Rally Family Support for a very important reason, is that sometimes what it takes is a quarterback to make sure all the providers and everyone on that child's team not only understand the goals, because that's important. You want to know where you're going, but you also need to understand what things look like right now, who is saying what, translating it, making sure teachers speak, parents speak, all of these things make sense for everyone. And that feels really important to me. And when I decided to leave the world of teaching and being an admin, I knew it had to be for something like this. It had to be to make sure parents felt empowered, to provide consulting, educational consulting, parent coaching. We also have some tutoring for children in the area of reading. To make sure that everyone understood what we were going to do, how we were going to do it, and what our objectives were. Because it's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and that's intimidating. When you are a scared parent and you got a lot of people expressing a lot of things to you, it feels scary. Plus, you're totally emotionally dysregulated because you love your child, and there's a lot of emotional investment. So you're not your best critical thinking and problem solving state. And I say that from experience. Fear can make you completely, you are unable to process the information the way you need to, and that's not great. That hurts you more. So I definitely want to make sure that I provide a space for parents to have a quarterback, process the information, match them up with therapists and intervention specialists that match their personality and their trajectory and like what they want, because it's a matchmaking moment too. You might not be great for everyone, which I do not think is true. I think
No, it's totally true.
But I think it has to work. And I think that's really overlooked in this process. And that's where a lot of the consulting comes from, or ends up being. Also, I work with schools. I work with little kids, private school, early childhood, pre-K through third. I work with families with toddlers. I love a toddler. Toddlers to me are so dreamy and fantastic. I know
you and me both.
They're just wonderful. But with schools, especially private schools and daycares, making sure it's accessible to the teacher. Accommodations are appropriate, developmentally appropriate. That's a big one. If families choose to work with both county and private resources, getting everyone on the same page. I'm going to do that a million times.
Now, wait, I'm going to pause you there because that's huge. So I want to just summarize here basically, and we're going to talk about how, like, I want you to give me a case study of like a family that you're working with and how you're helping them. But what I hear you saying is, number one, you're the quarterback. You're standing in the middle, in the eye of the hurricane, pulling in information from all the different sources. And if there's multiple people on the team, if the child gets OT, speech, special education, for example, they might be getting school OT, private OT, school SLP as speech therapist, private SLP, and then they might have a tutor, they might have all number of things. So that's like anywhere between one and a lot of people. And then you started to mention county versus, not versus, but county and private therapy. So what exists because of the laws in our country is that every child is entitled between the age of birth to 5 to a free evaluation, and if they qualify through their county, free therapy services or reduced cost therapy services when they qualify. Right. So that means that some kids get special education services through their county in which they live. Right. And it also means that oftentimes those services are not very much because it's poorly funded and they don't have the capacity and any number of things. So they might supplement with private therapy. So enter Jackie and Rally. And so walk us through that.
So one of the a common scenario that I see is, you described it perfectly. A child qualifies via the county for services, but it may not be everything that is necessary. So a family, when they're able, will supplement with private resources, a private therapist. And that creates a really interesting Venn diagram. Because what one therapist views as a priority, another therapist may disagree and have more time to focus on other goals. This causes a sense of confusion for the teachers and the parents. So one of the moments that's really vital, and one of the things that Rally tries to be the catalyst of, is having a very clear approach to what the families need to do at home to support specific goals. When a therapist is communicative and they have time and the ability to really make sure parents understand objectives and learning goals, that often takes care of itself. But when therapists are busy or they only have so much time they are allowed to provide, that message can become very confusing and convoluted. So making sure that a private speech representative and a county speech pathologist are providing information to the parents and then looking at that information and deciding where the parents can be impactful. That's a very big deal because, one, it empowers the parents and it makes parents feel like they are a part of the process. It is their child. They want to do the work. They want to help. They are left to feel as extra, as these superfluous sort of pawns in this, but that's not true. They can do some really, really, really important work. So making sure that we have some identifiable goals that I can provide to parents that match and can work from both viewpoints of the two resources that they have is a really big deal. And that's how I would insert myself with a speech pathologist. And what's interesting, and you will totally appreciate this, sometimes it's being a resource for a parent as just a person to go to when they have a silly question because they feel worried. They feel worried about asking a professional. One I get a lot is, what's the difference between speech and language? I don't get it. And it's not because they aren't listening. It's because they are stressed out, they're fearful, they're worried. And so when they're receiving that very baseline foundational piece of information, they're not receiving it. Yeah. So reaching out to me to be able to clarify something very small like that at a non-expert level. I am not an intervention specialist. I'm not a therapist, but to be able to provide as an educator some really foundational moments helps them buy in, be a part of the process, and be excited. And those sort of answers, the county representative is not going to be upset. The private resource representative is not going to be upset. This I can help with, and it stops parents from wasting the time that they do have with their therapists. Yeah. And they can get to the really nitty gritty, the big stuff they want to ask. They don't have to waste time on the small foundational stuff. Yeah. And Rally really likes to do that. That's my favorite, is for a parent to text me a question and maybe like, no biggie, here's a resource. This is the answer. Go all in.
Yeah. And that's so nice for parents to have that touchstone, because to your point, like speech therapists are busy. We're usually seeing kids all day long.
Yeah.
And you can't catch a break sometimes. And then, and I feel like speech pathologists are kind of the worst at this, where we're using a lot of jargon.
Sure.
All professionals do it. More professionals should be aware of it. And yet, how nice to like have somebody who can just, you can text them and they'll explain it to you.
Totally. I think it's intimidating. And like, we forget that because we've been doing this for so long, it's intimidating for parents. They asking, hey, what's the difference between receptive and expressive? Mm-hmm. To go ask that to somebody who's so knowledgeable, it's an intimidating situation. Mm-hmm. it's not that parents don't have confidence to do so. It's just they don't want to seem like they're not listening. And I find that to be the real moment. Is they don't want to insult the people who are helping their child by being like, hey, I know we went over this. Can I ask again? That makes them nervous. Their parents are nervous. And I really understand that. I feel it in my bones. I remember being a mom getting services and saying, I should know this. I know we talked about it. Oh, I'm a wreck. I'm not doing a good job. And then you spiral. And then it's awful. It doesn't work out for families.
Yeah. So tell us about sort of the different ways that Rally works with families.
Sure. Also, I think you're very good at this. And I want to note that I think you have a future in like daytime.
They're going to call me any minute from the studio. It's
I think
all
you
good.
can get your own show. I'm very comfortable. You choose.
I'm glad.
Your time. It's your moment. Okay. We do educational consulting to schools and to families. Love working with daycares. Love working with daycares because I think that's a really vulnerable spot. I think some of the people who need this information and need to understand not just what developmental red flags look like, but also how do we productively express what we need to families.
Yes.
So I love working with the daycare. So consulting with families and daycares or private preschools. I do a lot of parent coaching for families that have services and families that do not have services. And a lot of that is about things that I have learned after years in a classroom and years in a school that every family should have access to when you leave the hospital. And like a good example, like, you know, this, when you're talking to a small child, you should be at their eye level. You should be talking at a certain pace. These are things that seem so secondhand to us, but truly it's new information to families. They hadn't thought about it and they're just trying to keep everybody alive.
Yeah.
You know, like this feels like too small of a detail to pay attention to. So the educational consulting, the parent coaching with how to implement some routines in your home life to make each day a little smoother. And then last, we do, as I mentioned before, some tutoring. We specialize in reading. Reading is a big thing for me. And I don't just mean the basic know-how of reading and becoming a active reader, but being a happy, confident reader. I really think it's important to make sure we spend time fostering a love of reading and getting kids excited about it. This personal philosophy of mine has influenced Rally because I've seen a lot of families as a teacher and as an admin where the kiddo had learning differences and didn't love school. And it became a confidence issue. It became a combative thing, learning to read. And taking the pressure out of that situation and making it age appropriate and fun and multisensory and getting a kiddo to like the process and to feel like they're a confident reader, it's half the battle. A lot of some of the 504 and IEP and, you know, the learning accommodations you're going to see down the road, you know, if you can get a kiddo or a student to feel like they are a good reader and they like it, those accommodations are going to make more sense and be easier to apply. So that's where the reading piece comes in for Rally.
This is a whole other conversation, so we're going to leave it there. But like this confidence piece, this like calm, regulated space that parents are not in, and oftentimes the kids we work with are not in enough.
Totally.
What I hear, you know, the common thread I'm hearing is like, we're just getting everybody better regulated.
Everybody, let's come back, you know?
Let's come back. Yeah.
And we will come back to it because you and I could talk about the neurobiology and the psychology of all of this for hours.
Oh yeah.
It's a really big piece of training that I spend a lot of time connecting to teachers and parents about, because when you're with little kids, you have to remember it for yourself, not just for them. They need it, but you're co-teaching it, you're co-regulating. And that's really important.
Yeah. If people want to get a hold of you, where do they do that?
So I have a website, www.rallysupportsfamilies.com, and my email is jbeach@rallysupportsfamilies.
J Beach.
BEACH, just like the
We will link to all of that in the description.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was fun.
You're great.